You've probably heard of wrongful convictions before, but have you ever wondered how they happen? How an innocent person can end up spending decades behind bars for a crime they didn't commit? Today, we're going to walk you through one of Japan's most infamous cases of potential judicial error, the Sayama incident. It's a story that will challenge your faith in the justice system and make you question, how do we ensure that the pursuit of justice doesn't become a weapon of oppression? Today, let's delve into the infamous Sayama incident of Japan. On May 1st, 1963, the quiet streets of Sayama City, Japan, became the stage for a tragedy that would haunt the nation for decades. 16-year-old Yoshi Nakata set out on her usual walk home from school, unaware that this ordinary day would be her last. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Yoshi's family grew increasingly worried when she hadn't returned home from school by 6 in the evening, though it was her birthday. Around 7 p.m., Kenji searched for his sister, driving along her school route and near the station. Unable to find her, he returned home for dinner. By 7:40 p.m., the family's fears were confirmed when Kenji found a white envelope addressed to their father, tucked near the glass door. The ransom note demanded 200,000 yen for Yoshi's return, a devastating sum for their working-class family. Police established a command center to coordinate their response after the kidnappers instructed the family to deliver the ransom to a specified location the next day. By dawn on May 2nd, tension in Sayama City was at its peak. The ransom exchange was a disaster from the start. The missing girl's sister took fake money to the designated place, with as many as 40 police officers hiding and surrounding the site to catch the perpetrator and ensure the sister's safety. However, their presence was detected, and the suspect managed to escape in the ensuing chaos. The sister described the man as being 26 or 27 to 33 years old, normal-looking, rather weak, quiet, and soft-spoken. The police officer who came also described the man as someone who appeared to be over 30 years old. The botched attempt left investigators empty-handed, and the Nakata family in agonizing suspense about Yoshi's fate. Then on May 4th, the community's worst fears were confirmed. A body was found buried in an alley on a farm. It was identified as a 16-year-old Yoshi Nakata, who had been missing since May 1st. Her body was buried along a farm road near the Iruma River, just outside the woods and into a wheat field. Yoshi's body was found blindfolded, with thin cords tied around her legs and neck. Her hands were bound with a towel behind her back. A rough rope was placed over her body, which was buried face down, and a cobblestone had been placed on her head. Investigators believed she had been dead for 2 to 3 days, and the cause of death was asphyxiation from strangulation. Based on her condition when she was found, police concluded that Yoshi had been sexually assaulted and then murdered. Blood type B and semen were found in her vagina. There were wounds on both of her legs, suggesting she had fought back during the assault. Her fingernails also had skin fragments, believed to belong to the perpetrator. The news shocked the nation. It was widely covered by the media, and people voiced strong opinions about the case. Many criticized the police for failing to do their job, catching the suspect. Even though Yoshi's sister had been in close contact with the man thought to be the perpetrator, the police weren't able to gather any useful information, not even a description of his appearance. As grief and anger swept through the city, police found themselves under intense pressure to bring the killer to justice. Little did anyone know that this tragic discovery was just the beginning of a case that would expose deep-rooted societal issues and challenge the very foundations of Japan's criminal justice system. Unable to withstand the intense scrutiny, the police chief resigned, a move that only fueled public skepticism about the investigation's competence. As the police scrambled to regain control of the narrative and the investigation, they made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. Their focus shifted towards the Buraku community, a group already marginalized and discriminated against in Japanese society. On May 11th, investigators discovered a crucial clue, a missing shovel. Found about 124 meters from where Yushi's body had been buried, the shovel was traced back to a pig farm. This discovery shifted the investigation's focus to those connected to the farm. Near the Nakata family's home was the Ishida pig farm, run by Burakumin workers. Burakumin, or village people, are descendants of Japan's pre-Meiji feudal class associated with so-called unclean jobs like executioners, undertakers, slaughterhouse workers, butchers, and tanners. Despite the abolition of the feudal caste system, Burakumin descendants still face discrimination. The police's focus on the farm, fueled by stereotypes about theft and violence, sparked debate, with many criticizing their actions as classist and discriminatory. Among the 20 or so suspects that emerged was 24-year-old Ishikawa Kazuo, who would soon become the center of this case. Ishikawa's life had been marked by poverty and lack of opportunity from the start. Born on January 14, 1939, he grew up without even a basic elementary school education. The investigation took a sinister turn when Ishikawa was arrested on unrelated charges. This initial arrest gave the police the opening they needed to intensify their focus on the Buraku community. Societal prejudices played a significant role in this decision, as Burakumin were often stereotyped as criminal and lazy. As the police zeroed in on Ishikawa, they employed tactics that raised serious questions about the integrity of their investigation. They subjected him to the substitute prison system, a controversial practice that allowed them to detain him for extended periods without formal charges. During his 47 days in custody, Ishikawa's access to legal counsel was severely restricted, often limited to just 5 minutes at a time. The treatment Ishikawa endured during this period was nothing short of grueling. He faced interrogation sessions lasting up to 17 hours, during which he was subjected to intense psychological pressure. But the investigators didn't stop at pressuring Ishikawa directly. In a particularly troubling development, they began making threats against his family. They warned him that his relatives would face consequences if he didn't cooperate, exploiting his concern for his loved ones to push him towards a confession. As the days wore on, the relentless questioning and isolation began to take their toll on Ishikawa. The police, sensing his vulnerability, made a calculated move. They misled him about the consequences of confessing, promising that if he admitted to the crime, he would serve only 10 years instead of facing the death penalty. Under this immense pressure, and with no end in sight, Ishikawa finally broke. With Ishikawa's confession in hand, the police declared victory. He was officially named as the prime suspect in Yushi's murder, setting the stage for a trial that would captivate and divide the nation. At his first trial, Ishikawa pled guilty, and the court ruled that his confession was trustworthy. On March 11, 1964, he was convicted of aggravated murder, sexual assault, and kidnapping, and sentenced to death. However, during his appeal, Ishikawa claimed innocence, alleging that his confession was coerced through isolation and physical threats. The case against Ishikawa rested on a series of striking claims from the police. First, the ransom note became a central piece of evidence. Investigators pointed out unusual writing habits in the note, like using katakana instead of hiragana, and mixing Chinese and Arabic numerals for dates. These quirks matched Ishikawa's known handwriting, including a peculiar way of writing kanji particles. Then there were the testimonies. Ishikawa had confessed to seeing a three-wheeled car and asking a farmer for directions while delivering the ransom note. The police confirmed the car's presence and tracked down the farmer who identified Ishikawa in a lineup. Also, during the attempted transfer of the ransom, the older sister of Yoshi and the ex-military policeman heard a voice that was coming from the kidnapper. Both of them testified that the voice shares an extreme similarity with Ishikawa's voice. The evidence didn't stop there. When Yoshi's body was found, her hands were tied with towels from two specific distributors. Investigators traced both towels back to Ishikawa, one of the few people with access to them. His alibi, that he had been working with his brother all day, was later exposed as a lie. To the authorities, the case seemed solid, but Ishikawa's defense and supporters painted a different picture. Ishikawa, they argued, was a victim of coercion. As a member of the Puraku community, he had grown up in poverty without even an elementary school education. So at the time of his arrest, Ishikawa was illiterate. Supporters claimed he couldn't have written the ransom note, which used complex Chinese characters and showed a level of skill far beyond his abilities. A prominent linguist, Susumu Ono, analyzed the note and concluded it wasn't written by Ishikawa. There was also no physical evidence linking him to the note, no fingerprints on the paper or envelope. Later, handwriting experts testified that the ransom note's writing didn't match Ishikawa's. Prosecutors presented a fountain pen they claimed belonged to Yoshi Nakata, allegedly found at Ishikawa's home. However, this piece of evidence was only discovered after multiple searches of his residence, casting doubt on the thoroughness of the initial investigation. A major flaw in the case was the lack of witnesses. Despite Ishikawa's confession stating he and Yoshi walked together in broad daylight near a busy festival with over 800 attendees and workers in nearby fields, no one reported seeing them together. This absence of testimony was strange, especially given the path's visibility. The confession also claimed Ishikawa killed Yoshi to silence her screams around 4 p.m., yet a man working just 20 meters away heard no screams, only faint festival sounds over 500 meters away. In a later questioning, the man mentioned hearing a voice before 3:30 p.m., but it came from the opposite side of the forest. This vague statement was used in the trial as evidence, despite its questionable relevance. Crucially, the full details of the man's testimony, including his exact location, were not shared with Ishikawa's defense team until 1981, 18 years after the first trial, further undermining the case's credibility. Also, there were inconsistencies in Kazuo Ishikawa's confession. His confession claimed that the victim, Yoshi Nakata, suffered a head injury during the struggle, but soil analysis found no blood traces. It also stated he strangled her with his right hand, yet the coroner's report indicated no related bruises, instead showing cloth-like strangulation marks. Ishikawa allegedly carried the 54-kilogram body over a long distance without slinging it over his shoulder, but defense experiments showed it was impossible for even strong men to do so. No rope marks were found on the victim's ankles, despite claims she was lowered into a hole by a rope. Additionally, footprints at the scene did not match Ishikawa's. Despite these inconsistencies and the lack of solid physical evidence, the court dismissed much of the defense's arguments. They speculated Ishikawa could have copied the ransom note's Chinese characters from a magazine, explaining the errors. The court's refusal to address these inconsistencies left many questioning whether Ishikawa was truly guilty or if he was being scapegoated in a deeply flawed investigation. After a decade on death row, Ishikawa's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment with a possibility of parole. This development marked the beginning of a new chapter in Ishikawa's life, a relentless fight for justice from behind bars that would span half a century and expose deep-rooted flaws in Japan's criminal justice system. Behind bars, Kazuo Ishikawa underwent a remarkable transformation. A guard took it upon himself to teach Ishikawa how to read and write, opening up a world of knowledge that had been previously inaccessible. This newfound literacy allowed Ishikawa to delve into the complex social issues surrounding the Puraku community. As Ishikawa educated himself, support for his case grew outside the prison walls. The Puraku Liberation League became a powerful ally, advocating for his legal struggle as part of a broader movement against discrimination. Their efforts helped raise awareness about the injustices in Ishikawa's case and the systemic prejudices faced by the Puraku community in Japan. Despite this growing support, Ishikawa's path to justice was far from smooth. His appeals for retrial faced numerous setbacks. The first appeal took 8 years to be rejected, while the second dragged on for an astounding 17 years before being dismissed. Undeterred, Ishikawa and his defense team filed a third appeal in 2006, focusing on new evidence that supported his innocence. In 1994, after serving 32 years of hard labor, Ishikawa was released on parole. However, freedom came with its own challenges. The stigma of his wrongful conviction followed him, making it difficult for him to reintegrate into society. Today, at 86 years old, Ishikawa continues his fight for justice. He has made public appearances to discuss his case and advocate for reform, stating, "I want the label of murderer, which is bearing so heavily on me, removed." The Sayama incident stands as a haunting reminder of how easily justice can be derailed. Kazuo Ishikawa's decades-long struggle exposes deep flaws in Japan's legal system, particularly its treatment of marginalized communities. His case shines a spotlight on the dangers of coerced confessions and the critical need for fair and unbiased trials. If Ishikawa is ultimately proven innocent, this case would remain a haunting example of justice gone wrong, a permanent, unsolved mystery where the real perpetrator escaped accountability due to a flawed, patchwork investigation. The statute of limitations has expired, meaning even if the true culprit were identified, they would never face punishment under the law. So, what's your take on this case? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and that is all for today. Thanks for watching.